Hello, I'm DonTheCrown, and welcome to the Mayhem Berserker in Lost Ark. This video should cover all of the PvE aspects for playing this build, and we'll go over the build in general, cover the Chaos Dungeon and raiding skill sets, as well as priorities for engravings, card sets, and tripods and gear. The Berserker is a melee damage dealer that focuses on dealing massive damage with high cooldown attacks. A lot of these attacks have longish animation times and require smart use to avoid being punished for overextending or just missing. When you do land your attacks correctly, you will do extreme amounts of burst damage. We will also bring to the table a lot of stagger and destruction abilities, but we don't really provide our team any buffs to their damage. This build focuses on the class engraving Mayhem, which allows us to remain permanently within our burst state. This burst state is different than the normal burst state in that it provides flat damage, attack speed, and movement speed, but no critical strike chance. On top of that, our health is reduced to 25% of our maximum, and we cannot heal past this point. We get a 65% damage reduction buff, which means that we are only losing 30% of our effective health. Shields are also reduced to 25% of their original value. However, healing is left at full power, which makes this end up being a rather tanky build. Being at low life also allows us to take advantage of some tools that other classes can't use all the time. We can exit our burst state by pressing X, which will instantly heal us for 25% of our maximum health, but we cannot re-enter burst for 30 seconds. Since heals are not reduced, this allows us to save lots of gold by using green health potions because their 30% heal is a full heal for us. We also benefit a lot from being in a party with a paladin or bard because their heals are 4 times as effective on us compared to other classes. Personally, I prefer playing with paladins because their 40-second cooldown shield heals us for over 30% of your max health, and that doesn't require you to stand in anywhere special to get the benefit of the heal. Also note that Campfire is insane for this build because we can completely heal up in situations where we don't have to move for a while. For skill sets, there are 2 main skill sets that I recommend using. Luckily, Lost Ark provides the ability to save 2 skill sets for free that you can toggle between in most situations when skills are off cooldown. For the first skill set, it's more based around killing large groups of enemies and is great for Chaos Dungeon, which is a daily monster killing activity, or just general out in the world gameplay. The second skill set is more focused on maximizing your single target damage and includes our counter skill, which also helps buff our damage a bit on use. First, let's talk about entering Mayhem. When you first enter a new zone, you will not be in your burst state, and you should do it right away by pressing Z. Pressing Z again will unleash a series of dark slashes that do decent damage and provide super armor. This skill is great because it's effectively another level 10 skill at our disposal, but it does less damage than most of our other heavy hitting skills. Activating this right before you're about to be knocked back or down is a great way to avoid crowd control while also dishing out damage. Just be careful because this does have a rather long attack animation and you don't want to get hit by too much. Shoulder Charge is our movement skill of choice. This allows us to move around in fights and has a relatively short cooldown. One thing to note, it actually hits multiple times, so you can use it to break through barriers quickly. Take the excellent mobility tripod for this skill. Red Dust is one of our key skills. It sends out a damaging line that pierces all enemies it hits, and those enemies take 30% more damage from you for the next 6 seconds. And thanks to the Vital Point Strike tripod, when we hit with this skill, we're going to get 20% increased crit strike chance during this time. This skill should always be followed up with our hardest hitting abilities like Finish Strike or Hellblade, which we'll cover shortly, and this skill is just really here to buff our other major skills and should never be used alone. Note that unlike the majority of our other skills though, this does not provide immunity to stagger and can be interrupted by taking hits from bosses. Finish Strike pairs nearly perfectly with Red Dust because due to animation time and cooldown changes from tripods, these skills almost always come off cooldown together if they're used in order. The Kill Confirm and Weak Point Detection tripods make this do monster damage to bosses. For the first tripod, you have the option between going safe with Tenacity, which will add super armor to the skill to prevent being interrupted, or you can slow the skill down even more with Enhanced Strike for more damage. I'd recommend starting off with Tenacity, and then once you build up some familiarity with the skill, you can switch over to Enhanced Strike, especially if you have the Galewind rune to put on there, because that helps speed up the animation noticeably. Hellblade is a heavy hitting skill that has a perfect zone element. Hold down the skill and release it within the window on the cast bar to unleash its full effect. The jump tripod allows us to reposition for maximum effectiveness and can be used as a re-engage tool after a boss mechanic forces you to move away from the boss. The Deadly Blow tripod is insane for our build because it increases the damage by 80% when our health is below 50%, which is all the time. Earth Flip makes the skill effectively hit twice, which doubles the damage. Sword Storm is another skill that benefits from our low health, with the Flame Storm tripod granting 100% more damage. Weak point detection and vital point strike make this skill slap bosses and elites silly. This skill is great for its rather short animation and decent range. I like to use this whenever I'm in range of enemies because its quick animation rarely leaves you in trouble, and its wide cone can hit moving targets. Tempest Slash is a short-range spin that does decent damage. Quick Preparation makes it a relatively short cooldown skill, weak point detection increases boss damage, and Driving Hit makes the skill no longer move you forward. Removing the forward movement is rather nice for boss fights because otherwise when you activate the skill you can end up not behind the boss and maybe in some undesirable location. Strike Wave is a great charged up skill that we use in both of our area of effect builds and single target. We take the Wave tripod on both setups for extra damage, and then Cerebus and Blaze Wave for the area of effect setup. This combo makes 3 fiery lines shoot out that then detonate after a short delay. For single target, we'll take Limit Break and Earth Flip, which makes the skill charge up twice, and then release one slow moving wave of rocks that can hit bosses up to 4 times. This skill does devastatingly large amounts of damage to enemies, but against quick moving bosses it can be somewhat hard to aim correctly. Whirlwind is a skill that we only take in our area of effect build because there's just better options for single target. Sustain Enhancement increases the duration of the skill, while Cracked Blade makes it bigger. Vacuum Slash also increases the area and damage of the skill, and it's rather satisfying killing enemies in Chaos Dungeon with this spin to win. Lastly, Chainsword is our counter skill, but sadly it's rather slow and short range counter skill compared to other classes, and at a glance it kind of feels bad. What's not bad about it though is the Vital Point Strike tripod provides a short-term crit buff that you can pair with one of your heavy hitting skills when Red Dust is on cooldown. Once you have a lot of skill points, the Swift Attack Preparation also adds some attack speed, and Quick Preparation allows you to use this skill even more often. Adding a quick recharge or rage rune is ideal for this skill. If you're going into a situation where you really want to be able to counter, take the Nimble Movement tripod and use a Galewind rune. It's important to note that with the exception of Strike Wave, every single one of our main damaging abilities is a back attack ability, which means that you want to be behind the boss when you're hitting it for an additional 5% damage and 10% critical strike chance. This can massively increase the amount of damage you're doing, and you're going to be chasing around the back of the boss a lot. Our awakening skill choice is the second awakening, Berserk Fury. This summons up a gigantic energy sword that you can then channel and aim before releasing a massive strike. Always try to time this to hit when Red Dust is active to benefit from the increased damage and critical strike chance. The other awakening, Chain of Vengeance, is okay, but it does less damage overall. For engravings, it's important that you have at least level 1 of your class engraving so that you're actually playing this build. You can rather easily get 20 uncommon class engraving recipes from many different sources, and then add the 2+3 nodes to your character sheet. From here, increasing the level to level 3 will scale the flat damage provided by the engraving from 4% to 18% with no downsides. It can be somewhat difficult to get this engraving to the 3rd level though, since you can only get class engravings on accessories and not on ability stones, but it's definitely worth doing. Next, both Grudge and Curse Doll provide big damage boosts, but they come with large downsides that do not scale, so don't use either of these unless you're able to get to at least level 2. Also note that Grudge especially will make the game harder if you can't avoid taking damage, because it'll increase all incoming damage by 20%, whereas Curse Stall isn't that much of a negative because our healing potions are already over healing us, and let's just reduce the amount a little bit. Other good engravings are Champion's Tenacity, Keen Blunt Weapon, and Raid Captain. Note that the other class engraving, Berserker's Technique, does absolutely nothing for our build and should not be taken. When we're in our burst mode, it doesn't count for the same burst mode that Berserker's Technique affects. For stats, we want to focus mostly on crit. Swiftness is a good secondary stat, but all of your accessories would ideally have crit on them. Note that unlike most other classes, we actually don't benefit from specialization all that much. It only really increases our awakening damage and doesn't increase any of the damage we have in our burst mode. Your pet should be maximum health and crit. The increase to crit only scales the value of your stats. So if you have 1000 crit, a 10% pet will add just 100 crit to your character. Cards are incredibly important for this build and help to shore up the lost health from your class engraving. Starting off, use the Nature's Elements and Trixian sets that you get from the main story quest. After that, completing the 3-card set We'll Meet Again from Shoeshire is a massive increase. The damage reduction below 50% will always be active and appears to be multiplicative with our 65% damage reduction from class engraving. For the remaining 3 cards, you can continue to use the 2 Nature's Elementals, or you can farm out the Forest of Giants set from Tortoik for more defenses. The Lost Wind Cliff or Light of Salvation decks are also insane and great for massive damage, but they provide a little bit less overall defenses compared to the aforementioned setup and require way more time and investment to acquire. Starting in Tier 3 Punica, gear will start to have tripods on them. This effectively boosts the level of your tripods, and each piece of gear can have up to 3 tripods on them. If you open up the skill panel, you can set the tripods that you want to watch out for by clicking Set Tripods. This will highlight items with tripods that would be upgrades for you, but you can only fit 18 tripods onto your gear. I'd recommend taking all the tripods for Finish Strike, Storm Sword, Strike Wave, and Tempest Slash for your single target setup. Then for Hellblade, you can skip the jump tripod as it has little effect and pick up the Vital Point Strike tripod for Chainsword. Then take the first 2 tripods for Red Dust, which leaves enough space for either Shoulder Charge, Excellent Mobility, or the second tripod from Chainsword. And lastly, for leveling, Tempest Slash and Finish Strike are your bread and butter skills. Levels 4, 7, and 10 for skills are key breakpoints for tripods, so try and consolidate your skill points once you have enough skill points to raise these up. Now, you can respec for free, it's like really easy. You just have to make sure the skills that you're adjusting aren't on cooldown. And then once you get Mayhem, Swordstorm, and Hellblade really start to shine due to their tripods that increase damage on low life. And that's it for the build. I've had a lot of fun playing this on the Russian servers and look forward to playing it on NA. This is my first ever build guide for Lost Ark, so let me know how I did in the comments below. If you like the content, then come by the stream.